W. Wabbler. Foot wabbler, a contemptuous term for a foot soldier frequently used by those of the cavalry. To waddle, to go like a duck, to waddle out of the change alley as a lame duck, a term for one who has not been able to pay his gaming debts, called his differences on a stock exchange, and therefore absents himself from it. Wag, an arch, frolicsome fellow, waggish, arch, gamesome, frolicsome. Wagtail, a lewd woman, waits, musicians of the lower order who in most towns play under the windows of the chief inhabitants at midnight. A short time before Christmas, for which they collect a Christmas box from house to house, they are said to derive their name of waits from being always in waiting to celebrate weddings and other joyous events happening within their district. Wake, a country feast, commonly on the anniversary of the tutelar saint of the village, that is, the saint to whom the parish church is dedicated, also a custom of watching the dead, called late wake, in use both in Ireland and Wales, where the corpse being deposited under a table, with a plate of salt on its breast, the table is covered with liquor of all sorts, and the guests, particularly the younger part of them, amuse themselves with all kinds of pastimes and recreations. The consequence is generally more than replacing the departed friend, walking cornet and ensign of foot, walking poulterer, one who steals fowls and hawks them from door to door, walking stationer, a hawker of pamphlets, etc., walking the plank, a mode of destroying devoted persons or officers in a mutiny or ship board by blindfolding them and obliging them to walk a plank laid over the ship's side by this means, as the mutineers suppose, avoiding the penalty of murder. Walking up against the wall, to run up a score, which in alehouses is commonly recorded with chalk on the walls of the bar. Wall, to walk or crawl up the wall, to be scored up at a public nouse. Walled-eyed, having an eye with a little or no sight, all white with a plastered wall. To whop, to copulate, to beat, if she won't whop for a winnie, let her try for a make. If she won't lie with a man for a penny, let her hang for a halfpenny. Mort, whop, apace, a woman of experience, or very expert at the sport. Whopper-eyed, sore-eyed, wear, a woman's wear, her commodity. Ware-hawk, an exclamation used by thieves to inform their confederates that some police officers are at hand. Warm, rich in good circumstances, to warm, to give, or give a man a warming, to beat him, see chaffed. Warming pan, a large old-fashioned watch, a Scotch warming pan, a female bedfellow. Warren, one that is security for goods, taken up on credit by extravagant young gentlemen. Cunny Warren, a girls' boarding school, also a boarding house. Wash, paint for the face, or cosmetic water. Hogwash, thick and bad beer. Wasp, an infected prostitute, who like a wasp carries a sting in her tail. Waspish, peevish, spiteful, waste. House of waste, a tavern or alehouse, where idle people waste both their time and money. Watch, chain and seals, a sheep's head and pluck. Watermill, a woman's private parts. Water sneaksman, a man who steals from ships or craft on the river. Water, his chops watered at it. He longed earnestly for it, to watch his waters, to keep a strict watch on anyone's actions in hot water, in trouble, engaged in disputes. Water bewitched, very weak punch or beer. Waterpad, one that robs ships in the river Thames. Watery headed, apt to shed tears. Water scrieger, a doctor who prescribes from expecting the water of his patients. See piss prophet. Wattles, ears, cunt, whereas, a one-horse chase. Weasel-faced, thin, meagre-faced, weasel-gutted, thin-bodied, a weasel in a thin, long, slender animal with a sharp face. Wedding, the emptying of a necessary hovis, particularly in London. You have been at an Irish wedding where black eyes are given instead of favours, saying to one who has a black eye. Wedge, silver plate because melted by the receivers of stolen goods into wedges. Cunt, to weed, to take a part. The kiddie weeded the swells' screens. The youth took some of the gentleman's banknotes. Weeping cross, to come home by weeping cross, to repent. Welch comb, the thumb and four fingers. Welch fiddle, the itch, see Scotch fiddle. Welch mile, like a Welch mile, long and narrow, his story is like a Welch mile, long and tedious. Welch rabbit, i.e. a Welch rarebit. Bread and cheese toasted, see rabbit. The Welch are said to be so remarkably fond of cheese that in cases of difficulty in their midwives applying a piece of toasted cheese in the janua vita to entice the young taffy, who on smelling it makes most vigorous efforts to come forth. Welch ejectment to unroof the house, a method practised by landlords in Wales to eject a bad tenant. To well, to divide unfairly, to conceal part, a cunt phrase used by thieves where one of the party conceals some of the booty instead of dividing it fairly amongst his confederates. Well hung, the blowen was nuts upon the kiddie because he is well hung. The girl is pleased with the youth because his genitals are large. Westminster wedding, a match between a whore and a rogue. Wet parson, one who moistens his clay freely in order to make it stick together. Wet Quaker, one of the sect who has no objection to the spirit derived from the wine. Whack, a sheriff booty obtained by fraud. A paddywhack, a stout brawny Irishman. Whapper, a large man or woman. Wheedle, a sharper. To cut a wheedle, to decoy by fawning or insinuation. A cunt. Wheedleband in the nick, regular of drinking over the left thumb. Whelp, an impudent whelp, a saucy boy. Warriors, to follow a warriors, to become a bankrupt, to figure among princes and potentates. The notice given in the Gazette that is commission of bankruptcy is issued out against any trader, always beginning with the word whereas. He will soon march in the rear of a whereas. Wet, a morning's draught, commonly white wine, supposed to whet or sharpen the appetite. Whetstone Park, a lane between Holborn and Lincoln's Inn Fields, formerly famed for being the resort of women in town. Wids, words, cunt, to whittle, to tell or discover. He whittles, he peaches, he whittles the whole scrap. He discovers all he knows. The cull whittled because they would not tip him a snack. The fellow peached because they would not give him a share. They whittle beef and we must brush. They cry out thieves and we must make off, cunt. Whittler, an informer or one that betrays the secrets of the gang. Whiffles, a relaxation of the scrotum. Whifflers, ancient name for fiffers, also persons at the universities who examine candidates for degrees. A whiffling cur, a small yelping cur. Whimper or windle, a low cry. To whine, to complain. Whinyard, a sword. To whip the cock, a piece of sport practised at wakes, horse races and fairs in Leicestershire. A cock being tied or fastened into a hat or basket. Half a dozen carters, blindfolded and armed with their cart whips, are placed round it, who, after being turned thrice about, begin to whip the cock, which, if anyone strikes so as to make it cry out, becomes his property. The joke is that instead of whipping the cock, they flog each other heartily. Whipjacks, the 10th order of the cunting crew, rogues, who, having learned a few sea terms, beg with counterfeit passes, pretending to be sailors shipwrecked on the neighbouring coast, and on their way to the port from hence they sailed. To whip off, to run away, to drink off greedily, to snatch. He whipped away from home, went to the alehouse, where he whipped off a full tankard, and coming back whipped off a fellow's hat from his head. Whip belly vengeance, or pinch gut vengeance, or winch, which he that gets the most has the worst share, weak or sour beer. Whippersnapper, a diminutive fellow. Whipshear, Yorkshire. Whipster, a sharp or subtle fellow. Whipped syllabub, a flimsy, frothy discourse or treatise without solidity. Whirligigs, testicles. Whisker, a great lie. Whisker splitter, a man of intrigue. Whisken, a shallow brown drinking bowl. Whisky, a malt spirit much drunk in Ireland and Scotland, also a one-horse chase. See Tim Whisky. Whistle, the throat, to wet one's whistle, to drink. Whistling shop, rooms in the King's Bench and Fleet. Prison, where drams are privately sold. Wit, i.e. Whittingtons. Newgate, cunt. 5 rum padders are rubbed in the dark man's out of the wit and are piked into the Deserville. 5 highwaymen broke out of Newgate in the night and are gone in the country. White ribbon, gin. White feather, he has a white feather, he is a coward, an allusion to a game cock, where having a white leather is a proof he is not of true game breed. White-livered, cowardly, malicious. White lie, a harmless lie, one not told with a malicious intent, a lie told to reconcile people at variance. White sergeant, a man faced from the tavern of alehouse by his wife, is said to be arrested by the white sergeant. White swelling, a woman big with child is said to have a white swelling. White tape, Geneva. White wool, Geneva.